I think it's always better just to know what you don't want over knowing exactly what you want. Like
Hmm.
whenever something happens, it's like, oh, I don't prefer that. I don't really rock with that. I always give a great thank you because I don't think that that's something that should be reiterated twice. Why do you going to keep getting things presented to you that you or giving attention to things that you don't necessarily prefer?
A lot of the times we don't hold ourselves in the same regard that other people hold us to,
Right.
right? And again, I remember you told me, I think you said Miami first, then Milan, then New York,
Hmm.
and it's just like for someone to be making a living, not only on how you look, but on how, like you said, how you fill a space.
A lot of the successes that we have are determined by how healthy we treat that relationship with our passions. Big. Bro, thank you so much,
Absolutely,
dude.
might be a little bit hot, man.
Oh, it's all right, man. Thank you.
For creamer, sugar.
Thank you, brother.
Busy day for you today?
It's been a great day, just packing everything in with just meetings, onboarding stuff. So it's been a good busy. It's been a good kind of busy. Like whenever
Right.
I say busy, I don't like to associate it with like clutter. You know, people say like, "Oh, I'm so busy right now." I'm
Negative
like,
connotation to it.
yeah, I have no negative connotation. It's
Yeah.
been active.
Right. That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah, man. So
Mhm.
there leads me to believe you're particular with words.
Oh yes, bro. As you would say, it's the intentionality and the how you kind of structure what you think and what you believe. Like trusting your words a little bit more.
Mhm.
So you're a little more careful with how you interpret things. That's at least how I see it.
My mom always told me words have meaning.
Oh my God, yes,
Right.
bro.
So when I used to say dumb stuff when I was younger, she'd be like, "Don't say that."
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, "You don't know what you're saying. Like, like words have power and words have meaning."
Exactly.
So I'm very intentional on how I use my wording and like what I say.
Mm-hmm.
That way, it's like what you say, I think you think or you feel.
Yes.
So I want to put a positive spin on a lot of things a lot of the time.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, like we give life meaning. You
Correct.
can't like people go out searching for the meaning of life, and it's
Frank
really
Vogel.
like, exactly, bro. Like you get it. That's why I was very grateful when when it came down to choosing people who you want to work with and who you trust to build, and like where you need advice, you just gotta say, look, I need guidance in this area. I think it's important to know people who actually have a certain processing of how they think and how they feel and also how they express themselves particularly.
Right.
So one thing I was really impressed with you was the way you structurized your way of giving knowledge and guidance. It seemed like it was very intentional and to a point where you had to understand what it looked like to have a negative connotation on something in order to give a positive meaning from it. So it's kind of like a full circle. So,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. I remember, coming up with the roadmap session that we did for you.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to, again, be intentional with like the wording. So instead of saying like you, I say like I'm paying this way, right? So I got that.
Thank you, brother.
Putting myself in the position of, let's say, someone who's doing it, let's say, incorrectly, right? So instead of, having the client, so it's like you're paying it this way. So I'd be like, so I put myself in that position where I'm the one doing the wrong thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I may pay it off, at the end of the month. It's just like, but you making several payments. So then that person already starts to associate it with what they're going to be doing moving forward. So that's something that my mom's always taught me. And then I think if you're trying to connect to someone's feelings and emotions, you stand on their left side, right? If it's something a little bit more analytical, it's the right side. I guess it's like left brain, right brain, and then how they associate certain information that you're trying to communicate.
That makes a lot of sense, and that's very valuable information.
Mm-hmm.
That's extremely valuable because I think sometimes we put things into such a broad perspective that we just go at and just throw things into a pot. As long as it makes it in the pot, it makes sense. But it's actually, if you put it into concept like that, it becomes way more intentional with the direction.
Mm-hmm. And that's if you're trying to guide people into doing something,
Right.
right? Then you kind of want to play with those two factors, like the emotion behind it, and then the positioning of like certain words and, let's say, maybe not responsibility, but to an extent, a
Yeah.
little bit of the responsibility.
Absolutely, because if we really put it into context, we're feeding people. We're not just feeding people food. We're not just feeding people our ideas. We're feeding people energy. And when we put, and which is no different than somebody's cooking in the kitchen, how you prepare a dish is going to play a role in how somebody eats it, how they also want to talk about it, how they digest it. So I think that even just putting things into a concept of when you're learning something and giving guidance and instruction, it has to have the same type of intention, no different than how we speak and how we understand and how we digest each other's like presence,
Right.
you know?
And then it has a lot to do with, like you said, like the energy that people give off.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the communication that we do, I think it's, I don't know the statistic, but like 80% of it is nonverbal.
Yep.
Which means body language.
Yep.
So, like you can pull that up to like, right, yeah.
Love your equipment, brother.
Thank you, man. That's I think we need to get a couple more mics that way, because a lot of people. So my brother does. He will have a guest.
Mm-hmm.
I will have a guest. We've had a few together, but a lot of people ask us like, when are you and your brother going to do one together?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I know we need to get a couple more mics. That way we get different perspectives.
Of course, bro. But this is fire. I love the art. I'm an art freak.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I love art, bro. Like, man, when I spend time in many different places. Art Basel is one of my favorite areas, but like,
which one? I'm sorry.
Art Basel.
Oh, okay. Where's that at?
In Miami. So like, used to when people did Art Basel, they used to go and buy the art. Now it's become a whole thing about who can flex and who can, So like, you kind of lose the true artist. But some of the greatest pieces of art I've seen was from when I went to Art Basel, and then you also have architecture and design, which is also great to the eye. When you have people who do interior designing, I like that kind of stuff. So as I'm looking at the space, I'm very impressed with your choice of art, because it really speaks volumes of like the type of person, and you get a chance of character. That's why I think people should have art in their house.
So funny. So all these my brother has done.
That's sick.
Right, and he started painting during COVID, and he would always tell me, he's just like, "Why don't you paint? You should paint." Because I'd be like, "Damn, that's dope. Yeah. Man, that's nice." And he'd be like, "Why don't you try it?" And I'd be like, "Nah, I can't draw." Like, "Oh, I can't." And then in May, I started to dabble in it myself. But when I'm at my brother's house, because when we film and when we do things, instead of coming all the way up from Egypt, which is where I live, Hesperia, I'll just spend the night at his house. And the other day I was in his living room and I was just like looking at all his artwork, because again, like you said, it gives you, I think it can give you an idea of the person.
Yeah.
I took art history when I went to college for a few semesters, and some people try to interpret it like the brushstrokes and the this and the that. And I think that kind of gets convoluted with the person's own interpretation of it. And that's sometimes what I really don't like. It's just like, you don't know that. Right? You don't know but it's cool to see, again, someone expressing themselves through art.
Yes.
And everything that I have up in my house, I've made myself. And prior to purchasing the home, I told my mom, I was like, it's going to look like a gallery in here, lady. Like, it's going to be, like all over. And luckily, I've had the chance to be able to put up some of the artwork that I've done. And I still need to get a little bit better and add some more. But yeah, man, art is, definitely an expression.
Absolutely.
And I like how we can put something that is sometimes in our brain and put it out on canvas, on paper, photography, video, like all those artistic outlets, I think are super dope to see how someone has their view or their interpretation of things. Yes,
absolutely. And even in my workshop in Cellular Look, I try to tell people that is a part of how they think that their face and their the way they photograph, it's like, well, this is how I look. How I look is I'm stuck there. And it's not exactly all about how you look. It's how you're expressing the features that you've been given. And honestly, aura matches, like how somebody can read you from across the room is no different than how they can read you if you're lying. Everything has a certain frequency to it where you can feel exactly what is being projected and processed internally simultaneously if you are open and present.
Yeah.
So I think that one thing that art actually does that's really cool that a lot of other things just don't necessarily allow the capacity to be explained is truth. Your truth in terms of how you think and feel simultaneously. Like art itself, when you think about painting, you have people who talk about their process. Like you have to say like, oh, the strokes, and it has to be like, you need this type of pencil and all this. While that may be true, you can get a different sense of understanding of why they chose that tool to use it, but it doesn't necessarily have a reflection on what the person was actually trying to convey. So if you just because you use a tool in some type of way, it doesn't necessarily mean you have the knowledge of its meaning and its purpose behind it just because you use it just to use it,
right?
Just to have it. It's like, well, I have this, so I must use it. You get your haircut, barbering,
yeah.
So it's like you
got it the other day. I mean,
fresh.
I got the hat on right now, but
I stopped when I taught myself how to cut hair and do barbering.
I just saw one of your videos. You're teaching me how to do a little fade.
Yeah, so like in COVID, I started sharing more just like little kind of tips and stuff, but one thing that I didn't want to do is I didn't want to crowd my audience with a bunch of different types of clippers, because one thing I saw on the internet was guys was just having a bunch of clippers in their arsenal, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, I use this trimmer because it has this blade, and I have this RPM that goes this route, so you want to use it for this texture. All that is valid, but are you really doing anything if you're not actually creating from a place that has the truth of just saying, hey, I know how to do a fire haircut. I just know your texture of hair to know the touch. The touch is the meaning I feel when it comes down to art, not the tool. That's what I say. All I have to say is about the touch, not the tool.
It's a vehicle.
Exactly.
Right? And not everybody has all those clippers and the trimmers and the edgers, all those different things. Not everybody has access to that.
Right.
So for you to be able to provide more people access to what you're providing or you're doing, so it's like, I just need some basic clippers for a fire haircut. Right?
It's the touch.
Exactly.
It's about the touch. So yeah, people's like, oh, it's like it's your touch. Like your tone. Tone is touch too. It's a lot of mirrors, synchronicities with how we express ourselves through life. So even in photographing, I would compare your touch to your openness. How open are you in front of the camera, and how open are you to being vulnerable when it comes down to being photographed, and understanding like how your micro movements actually play a force in what you're conveying to the camera. So like there's different levels of touch. Even when you're teaching about credit, it's like you have the you're not reinventing the wheel. You know what I'm saying? So you're just more so saying, here, I'm just telling you a different way of how to use it, how to look at the wheel. Yeah. So I like how I really resonate with just how you were teaching. Like, yo, Diego gets it. Diego really gets it, man. So I'm grateful to see, to not only witness how much you've done, but I'm grateful to be in your presence to continue to talk more about again, and I think it's just about elevation and curating the lifestyle that we actually deserve with the knowledge of how to use the wheel and not just try to reinvent ourselves in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't remember where I heard that, but whenever I heard it, I was just like, like I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm like, I'm just showing you how the wheel works.
Yeah.
Right. And whether kind of again what you were talking about, like the vehicle, or I think it all even ties into like the energy that people give off with like body language and stuff like that. Like I've had a painting that I had done. It was originally trying to be a Medusa that I was trying to do. And this is when I was like barely starting, so I didn't have the patience to sit down and do it how I wanted. So when I would see a mistake, I'd be like, looks like I'm doing something else. And then what do I see in this painting that I'm doing? And I would tell my brother, I'm like, I literally grab, what's funny is, and I think I have a video of it, the guard from the clippers to make one of the whiskers of one of the paintings that I did.
That's amazing.
Like I was just like, what do I have in here that I'm like, and then I just started doing it, and it ended up being like whiskers. I ended up doing like a cat. And again, it was a guard for, I think, what kind of clippers are they?
Yeah,
I've always used wall.
Yeah,
I always use wall. And that just kind of, like you said, it's like, it's not about the tool. It's kind of like how you use the tool. And I'm just
Exactly.
using whatever is available.
Right.
And then the tool of, like you were saying, the expressions, because the photography aspect of modeling has a lot to do with, I think, how you were saying something is conveyed or portrayed, the editing, the lighting, but the subject has a lot to do with it.
Hmm.
And how you were saying the little micro movements that you're doing and what you're trying to convey. Where did you learn that?
I learned that from Dallas J. Logan, one of the first photographers that I had shot with, and he was based in New York. First time I flew to New York, my manager at that time had put me under the wing of one of his good friends, Dallas, and he had mentioned when I've had my first photo shoot, because when you think you understand something, and I love how in life we choose to have knowledge, but we never truly understand. Understanding is when you truly get on the route of wisdom.
Mm.
So to gain more wisdom in the modeling industry, Dallas Logan was talking about you have to understand your micro movements. And the micro movements were just slightly understanding where the eye level and your perspective of where your focus was being shifted. So you can easily like look at the camera and be a certain way, but if you didn't have your posture correct, and if you didn't have a connection with your angles and all that, you didn't have a connection with your full body. So therefore, you're just trying to give meaning.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to you're trying to make something have meaning when you have to give it that. You have to really understand that it's not about whether or not you look good in front of it, but actually opening up your full body to being present, to having having yourself present in that moment. So that's what the micro movements taught me. When you're walking down the street, you know when to run, when to walk, when to crawl, when to slow down, also when to stand still. It's no different than modeling. You got to know when to shift your eye level. You got to know when to drop the chin. You got to know when to turn the face. You got to know when to dip that shoulder. You got to know when to kind of sit down, and then just kind of work yourself into these new little moments that speak volumes over just going into it.
Right.
So my mistake was I was always when I first started, I was always just like trying to just get like copy an image that I saw that makes up look good, but it's like you're not doing that right. You got to work your way into it. So that was the micro movement. So working my way into my next moment helps me become more appealing and get me more attention and attract more clients and audiences through my pictures, because I was able to learn more about micro movements.
Do people ask you for specific looks?
Looks?
Like, look, I don't know,
like serious, mad, sad.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, to like try to convey like certain expressions or something like that. It's just like, hey, I want you to look seductive.
Yeah.
Or, certain things like that. And how important is the direction from the photographer to be able to capture that moment?
The photographer is going to express himself from his lens of experience, or their lens from experience. So when somebody says, oh, I want you to look more serious, it doesn't mean they want you to look more intense. They just want you to look a little bit more balanced. They want you to look a little bit more, just a little more structured in the face. So when I'm like, let's say if I'm like looking a little happy, and they want me to look more serious, doesn't mean they don't want me to be happy. They just want me to tone it down a little bit, tone down the expression of happy. Because if you're looking at a photograph and you feel something, you don't want them to feel just one thing. That's when it becomes commercial. When you're trying to sell something, it's commercialized. Look happy. Look sad. Look mad. Be happy. Be sad. Be mad.
Okay.
So when they said look more selective, I was like, oh, they want me to be a little bit more seductive. But I was like, I don't have to change how I feel my emotion. Gotcha. They just want me to take the toning of where I was at down to a level where it's not conveyed as something too overtoned.
Produced.
To produce, yeah, that's a good word.
Because at the same time, you're always selling something when you're a model, right?
Absolutely.
It's a product. Whatever it is, what you're, let's say, doing at that time. So if someone tells you like look pensive, right? So do you already have like a repertoire? You already have a book that you can kind of be like, all right, I got these looks down, Or is it in the moment, depending on the situation, depending on the environment, and maybe the connection that you either have or don't have with that photographer to get you to, again, execute what they're asking for?
That chemistry in that toolbox of two people runs deep because you have to open the toolbox to see what's in it. So when I'm going into a photographer's world, I'm studying the work that they've done previously so I can get an understanding of what's in their toolbox. So if I'm just going into just shooting something with any random photographer and I haven't done any research upon what's in their toolbox, which means I haven't seen how they light their photos, how they edit their photos, how they might do their angles, then I'm not understanding of where I'm going to need to be in my toolbox and know what's in there to be able to produce something, as you say, produce something that's of value, something that really gets the point across as to what we were trying to convey from the mood board. So when you have a mood board, in a sense, you have an idea of what it is that you feel fits that world and fits that place that you're walking into together. And then you utilize each other's toolboxes. Say, what's in your toolbox for this? Oh, this. I remember you did that shot where it was like, where you were. It's like kind of like astral projector, where you up and I was high. Look, let's try something like that because you were able to reference something that they've done, and now you can see where you can step in and use what's in yourself, understanding your movements, your micro movements, in order to fit what their strong suits are. So the mood board, studying. Practicing that chemistry in the beginning is always important. So photographers, when it comes down to them expressing exactly what they want and how they feel, again, using certain words like seductive or serious or sad or mad, I always just say, okay, well, what's in my Rolodex to know exactly what they mean by that, and then you just kind of pull stuff out. And then you just keep pulling stuff out until it gets like, oh, we got that. And then then that's when you know how to use that tool, and then that's when touch comes into play.
And that's like a symbiotic relationship between you and the photographer.
Yes, sir.
Right? And then studying someone would be, again, like, I think tone and lighting has a lot to do with tone or setting tone, right? Like the darks or like the lights, where you can light something a certain way and it gives it a certain tone, right? Or an angle. I also took world cinema and American cinema when I went to school. And just like certain angles, right? I remember the teacher would tell us, it's like, if they're shooting, from up, down, they want you to look down on the person. But if it's like up, or like the posture of like a Superman, they want you to look up and admire someone based on certain angles. And then you have like the lighting, and maybe it's like it's black and white, but the way that you do the white is, this way. And it gives it a different feel and a different tone to, again, the photographer and then the subject, and then you guys work together to try to produce whatever. Is it more, I'm assuming it's more of the photographer's vision of how the photo shoot is going to go?
I would call it subjective. I would call it perspective and point of view, because when photographers, sometimes they see a subject and they have somebody who they want to shoot with, or they are assigned to shoot, there's already these ideas that start to flow into their head. And once, as you would know, brother, once you get something in your head, it now becomes objective. It's finalized. It's like you have to, like, okay, this is what it is until it's something different. So when it comes down to getting on set and getting on into a room or a setting that's being shot, whether it's still photos or video photos, you're left at the will of whatever it is that it's being produced based upon somebody operating that tool. Because as a subject, you're not operating that tool. You're just feeling the environment. You're just feeling the space. It's like when somebody comes to one of your meetings, they come with the idea of this is going to do X, Y, and Z. So when you come into a modeling aspect, this is going to do X, Y, and Z. When you fill in what X, Y, and Z is based upon your own belief system of what's good or bad, you're left at the will of the creative process that somebody else has already predetermined. So that's when it no longer becomes about necessarily the art, more so about the product. So don't necessarily ever want to go into something where it becomes about the product, which means the final, and more so about the history and what it is that can be filled in the space, present moment to present moment, over trying to figure out whether or not you're getting what you thought about 3 days ago, 3 weeks
Right.
ago about the shoot. What's gonna happen now? It's like, we got to get this type of shot. I've heard that before. We got to get this shot.
Right.
That's like, we
Yeah.
got to get this shot. It's like, what if you already got the shot, but you just lost the meaning behind the shot? You lost the understanding of how, because it didn't fit your, again, the perspective. So working with different people in that area, in that arena, I think tells a great story just about art itself.
Right.
Again, how people use their tools and how they want their tools to express what it is that they feel is valid in that lifetime.
And to an extent, you're a tool.
Yeah, we all are.
It's like, if I have a vision for a photo shoot, it's like you're probably the main tool, you're the focal point
Right.
of that. But it's just like, how am I going to use Broderick to make this photo shoot come together? It's
Exactly.
like, I was watching, and I imagine, for example, like in acting, right? You get a script, and this is what I tell people all the time when I'm texting or writing on like Instagram or something like that. I use a lot of GIFs because it's hard to tell tone through text, right?
Yeah.
So I use a lot of GIFs, and I imagine someone getting a movie script, right? And then you look at it, and it's like, okay, how do they want me to say whatever this is? Do I say angrily like this? And I know that was sometimes a little bit more of a direction, but do I put more emphasis on this word or on that word, so that you can, again, really try to portray or convey what they want within that movie, script, scene, photo shoot, or something like that?
Yeah, because you would call yourself the producer, correct? So when you're the producer and you have something that you feel is going to be used to convey your story or whatever is being expressed on film or on paper, that becomes that automatically just becomes at the will of what you're using to, again, the tool. You say we all are tools, so it's like, I need to use this person in order to get this thing across. So when you said about like adding GIFs and stuff, for me, I'm like, wow, that is absolutely great advice, because as an actor, I just get words on a paper and I have to give the shit the meaning. So I'm used to just getting something on a blank canvas and having them and making a world out of it. Because when you're writing and you're trying to get stuff off and you have a mood board and a concept in mind, it just starts to bleed into whatever it is that the producer needs to get done. It's just more so it becomes less about whether or not you're using the right person. You just got to trust what you chose. You got to trust what you have and what you already have been given. And as an artist, I feel like that's the thing that we have the biggest weight on our shoulder. Just like, wow, okay, how can I show that I can be trusted?
To deliver what is, again, not expected or asked, but it's just like, again, to both deliver. Yeah, I guess it's like deliver the concept that they see, the vision that they're trying to see.
Yeah.
Right? I was watching a movie. I'm very particular about my movies.
Me too.
Very.
Me too.
Right? And I always tell people, it's like, I have a small little list of criteria. As long as it's acted well, shot well, directed well, with a good story and dialogue, that's all I really ask for. That's a lot to ask.
Not too much,
right? Just
to me, that's not enough,
right?
That's not too much at all, bro.
And there's certain movies that, like, for example, horror, and it's subjective when it comes to taste, right? Not for me. Storylines are always dumb. They're repetitive. The acting is horrible. The dialogue is not good.
Yeah.
A lot of people like horror. It's just not for me. And again, it's subjective. Just because I don't like something doesn't mean it's not good, or just because you do. So I always tell people I liked it.
Yeah.
Right? I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So I won't say like, oh, was that movie good? Because what's good to you might not be good to me. So I always ask, did you like it? Or I tell people I liked, this movie. And I recently saw a movie. It had been a long time since I've seen a movie that I really liked. And I saw one maybe like a month ago. And I was telling my brother, dude, I watched it back to back. Because as I was watching it in the beginning, a little bit, I was like a little bit like on my phone and like looking at stuff and like looking up during the opening credits. And then I started watching and I was just like, oh, I need to pay attention to this movie. I watch things with subtitles because I don't want to miss anything, right? And I was watching this movie. It's called The Proposition. And it is about like 1800s Australia. And there's like a family of basically like outlaws. And then the new, I guess it would be like a magistrate, proposes, he finds two of the brothers. And then he takes one and he tells him, if you don't basically kill your other brother, I'm going to kill your little brother. And then he's just like, you want me to kill my brother? And he's just like, I know he's the one that's behind all like the really like bad stuff. So if you value your little brother's life, you're going to kill your older brother. And I was like, oh shit. I was like, okay. And the way that it's shot, dude, the cinematography in that is really done well. He uses a lot of sunsets, which in the dialogue, and that's kind of something that the older brother talks about. Even though he's a bad dude, he's very philosophical, very well read, right? He quotes a lot of famous philosophers and things like that. And there's one scene where I'm like, dude, I think that had to have been, again, a very intentional director's choice. So it's in Australia and it's out in the desert, and then he has Aboriginals, right? And one of the guys is like, you could use a variety of different people, but the guy that he used is such a contrast between the background that they're using because of like of the desert and like kind of like the like white sand and his very, very, very dark skin. And he's super tall and super like lengthy and he's ripped, right? And then again, like you see the contrast between him and everybody else and his facial features and the darkness of his skin opposed to the light sand in the background, and the way that he sits like on a horse in comparison to everybody else. Everybody else is like normal size and he's just like big, tall, and long. And I was just like, again, you see the difference of an Aboriginal with a normal person. And then one of the other magistrates, that guy's boss, they do a close-up on his face. Clean shaven, clean mustache, like white, hair combed to the side, dressed super duper smart, opposed to the guy who gives the proposition, which is like the police officer. His face is sunburnt from being out in the desert. So he's all like super red, scruffy beard, long hair, disheveled, clothes dirty. And you see that comparison of like the original magistrate and then like this guy. And I'm like, dude, it was done so very well. I thoroughly enjoyed that movie.
The nuances.
All the little things.
Yeah.
The music, again, subtitles. As a certain scene is playing, you're reading along the lyrics and it's just like, ooh.
Feeling it to it.
Dude, yeah, the score on that, it's done. And then again, it's like old-timey music.
It's called The Proposition.
Yeah, The Proposition.
I gotta check this out.
Dude, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Wow. I love things where you have to listen to the tone.
And
that sounds amazing.
The aspect of, again, the storyline of one brother knowing that his brother was bad, but he still loves him, right? And then he's trying to get his little brother, who's not necessarily innocent, but at the same time isn't as bad as this one, and how he has to deal with that moral dilemma of what he needs to do to save his little brother. Or it's such a good movie, dude.
I gotta check this out. The Proposition.
It's with not Pierce Brosnan. Guy Pearce.
Guy Pearce. Oh, this is dope. Okay, yeah. That's an intentional choice.
And I guess you would say the antagonist, but he's not even the antagonist because he knows what he's asking of him and the moral dilemma that he is putting that guy through. So again, like he seems like the bad guy, but at the same time, he's also a good guy. Have you seen The Departed?
I have.
Mr. French?
Mr. French? I have not seen Mr. French.
No, he's Mr. French in The Departed.
Oh, I'm sorry. No. I misunderstood. I misunderstood which project you're talking about. I have not seen The Departed. I've seen. I was thinking Last Train to Busan.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Have you seen Sexy Beast?
No, I haven't seen Sexy Beast.
What else is he in? He's a British actor, like an English actor.
I'm familiar with his work, but I don't think I've seen those projects unless I have. Because I remember films not by their names, but more so by the storyline and then the how much the characters hit. So I can remember how a person played their character or how they filled that world before I would remember the name of the project.
Gotcha. So Guy Pearce was in Memento, where he like suffers from amnesia and then he has to write everything down. That's Guy Pearce.
Memento.
And then the other guy, again, he is Mr. French in The Departed. He's the main guy from Sexy Beast. Heavier set, like English actor. Dude, it's again, the dialogue is on point. The cinematography is on point. It's shot well, directed well. The music was good. As soon as I was done watching, I was like, let me watch this shit again to make sure I didn't miss anything.
I love films like that.
It had been a long time since I'd seen something that I have enjoyed as much as I did. But again,
so we have The Departed and the
Proposition.
The Proposition.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to tap into both.
It's on Prime.
Oh yeah, I'm a Prime member. I love Prime. Prime. I feel like Prime is the clutch for getting to the movies that that not only hit well but also hit that sense of nostalgia. Because there's not a lot of platforms I feel that actually carry those types of films with texture as much as they used to. Like you have Netflix has its stuff, Hulu has its stuff, Tubi has its stuff, all that. But Prime, it gives you so much more options. Even if you have to buy it, it's worth the buy for me.
I buy movies all the time.
I be buying. I'm like, purchase.
Yep. And like sometimes I'll be watching something with my mom and it won't be available and I'll buy it. She's like, just rent it. And I'm like, no. I'm like, I want to keep it in case I want to watch it again. I rewatch movies all the time,
bro. Because you get when you go through life and you have the experience of gaining a new sense of understanding, certain things hit different. Like The Incredibles hits different for me. Like because if you think about it, The Incredibles, it looks like a superhero film, but it's actually a lesson on learning your gifts through your family. That's what I see as in The Incredibles now. It's like you have to all find a way to remove yourself from how you identify with your family to fully fall into your gift to be an asset to the family. That's where I felt like The Incredibles taught me because I like animation, but I also think like you can find a lot of different meaning behind certain films because again, the directors, the writers, and all that, they have a certain intentionality of why they put it there. There's reasons. There's all reasons. So I like to buy things too so I can revisit the lessons.
Yeah.
It's like would you rent a book?
No.
Why would you rent a book? Keep it, pass it on. You know what I'm saying? Like revisit it. I'll be writing in my books.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Reference it later on. I like a lot of physical books. I also like Audible because I love stories. Me too, bro. That's why I love movies.
Yeah.
One of my side tattoos, it says "Grandpa, tell me a story" at the bottom of it, right? And sometimes, again, I just like to hear it, but I also like to write it myself, and I like to highlight it.
Yeah.
Right. I like the physical book. I also like the stories, and something might hit different for you at a different point in your life.
Absolutely.
So it's like when I read it the first time, I got this from it, but now that I'm older, or now that this is going on in my life, I look at it this way.
Yeah.
So it is, again, and that's art.
Yep. You revisit from a different set of eyes, and now you have now it has a whole new sense of meaning, and it's like it's not the old meaning didn't mean anything. You just had to understand what that meaning was in order to have the meaning that it actually is at this time. Timing is everything because the present is the present. The past is an illusion. And the future is yet to be determined, but it's happening now. So whatever is now is real and has meaning if you give yourself the meaning that it deserves. So I feel like when we give ourselves more meaning, we understand how to treat things with value.
Right. It's a perspective.
Yes.
And how you view things. Like Rocky, right? I've always told people that it's my favorite movie, and I think people have a misconception of what Rocky's about, right? It's like, it's not a boxing movie. I've always looked at it as a love story.
Oh, yes. I love that first. Yes.
That's what it is. That's what it's always been to me. It's a love story about a guy who happens to box, but he's really a loan shark.
Yeah.
Right. And all it is that movie is him trying to get at Adrian, trying to get at that shy girl who like is too shy of herself to kind of open up conversation, but still like he literally makes up a joke every time he goes to see her.
You see that, right?
Dude, he's just like, oh, I'll make up a joke and I'll come back tomorrow.
Yeah.
He's coming up with jokes, and then, you know, she kind of, it's not like the cold shoulder because every time he leaves, bye, Rock, but doesn't like, she's too shy to even like converse with him. And then everything that comes from it of him trying to prove it to himself that he's just not another bum off the street and that he can go the distance. And all these layered messages, I think, about perseverance, about drive, all tied into, again, like a love story.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, Rocky is my and then you go into Rocky 2 and 3. Like, it's just such a really good movie. The fact that he wrote it on his own.
Yeah, man. People forget that. That was all Sylvester.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that whole thing was to let you know what he's been through.
And they wanted to buy it from him, and then he kept on saying no, even though he was broke and sold his dog. He didn't have enough money to obviously live. He had to sell his dog, and I think he sold his dog, let's say, for $100, right, or $1,000, whatever. I think they had gone all the way up to like $500,000 to offer him for the script without him starring in it, and he was like, no, like I have to star in it.
Yeah.
And for him to stick to his guns and to, again, the first movie you ever make, you wrote. And it's such a banger.
Dog. It really helps. I feel when we get into the context of like what you said with relationships, I love that word because a lot of the successes that we have are determined by how healthy we treat that relationship with our passions and with the things that we feel that we should be involved in or fit ourselves in that environment. So if his relationship with that script meant nothing to him, besides just getting
money grab,
I just want just the story to get out, then we wouldn't have the context and the perspective of what it is that is the where the value actually lays within that world of in his particular, what I would say, sense of meaning in life, because art itself is an expression of life. It's an expression of love. It's an expression of passion, expression of hurt. It's all these little things that come to surface to give an audience something to feed off of.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so him having integrity with his energy of what he put into what he knows is not only profitable, but something that is of substance, then that means that he truly stuck to himself and stuck to what that is of being a boxer in a relationship. When you get into a relationship with life and a relationship with your partner, are you going into the ring every day, just 10 toes down, taking these jabs, getting back, getting some water, doing something like that's, it's very mirrored in the sense of how you see that and how I see life when it comes down to fulfilling a space with art, but also ourselves.
Dude, that art had, in my opinion, so much value. And again, I look at movies and I tell people all the time who like haven't seen Rocky in a long time or I've never seen it, and I'm like, I give excellent commentary, by the way, because of how I look at things.
Yeah.
Because even I don't think there are so many movies that wouldn't have been made if Sylvester Stallone didn't do that, right? Like, is it Good Will Hunting? Matt Damon and Ben Affleck wrote that and starred in it. So, and then what movies did that influence, and all these new directors and writers and stuff like that? But even like in the first scene of Rocky, I tell people all the time, I'm like, what do you notice? And I'm like, everybody just keeps on calling him a bum. They're throwing popcorn at him. He's in a shitty gym. And then he's literally getting paid, I think it's like $13 what he ends up getting at the end of the fight. And he goes home, shitty house, shitty apartment. And then you see, I think it's such a beautiful shot where he looks in the mirror and there's a picture of like a young him, sweet, innocent little kid. And then he has, it's on the mirror. And then you see the contrast of the sweet, innocent little kid and then what he's become now. His face is all beat up, cut. And he's like, he just sits there and he kind of just looks at it for a while. And it's like, damn.
Yeah, bro.
again, it's such a good movie in my opinion, or it's a movie that I thoroughly enjoy. I
It's
should say.
it's something that we can all take something from, and I think like when you get around people who really understand the art, it changes the meaning of what the other person might say, because somebody might just look at it as a boxing movie.
Hmm.
Oh, I'm using this to train. I'm inspired by this. Why are you inspired? Because I'm a boxer too, and I've been through shit and I've da. But it's like, do you actually know the context of why the story was written, how it was written, how it became to play? Again, like no different than how we feed each other food. Do you know where the product of the source comes from, where the intention of the product is, and how the intention is being produced?
Hmm.
It's a lot of things that I feel we sometimes overlook when we're at a certain place in our life, where we're just so stuck on, again, this producing mindset.
Right.
What is being produced, you know?
And it's how you consume what is being
Yes.
produced,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I think you can even be intentional on how you consume food or information or art.
Yeah.
Um, and that's, I think, the ability for someone to have all these different array of emotions. One of the reasons that I strongly dislike Michael B. Jordan is because he doesn't convey any emotion for me when he acts, right? Like at all. To me, he's just Michael B. Jordan in every movie. He doesn't become that character. He doesn't evoke any feeling from me in any of his roles. The only role that I've liked him in was Black Panther, when he's the antagonist, coincidentally. But besides that, he doesn't really do it for me. But at the same time, he is an actor and he might evoke emotion from a lot of other people. And I know that I think it was a Fruitvale Station. It was like his like first like breakthrough. Well, I know he was in The Wire as
Mm-hmm.
well, but I think that was where he started getting a little bit more like notoriety. It's like that person can do and have so many different ways of people interpreting what he's doing, which is like an art form.
Mm-hmm.
So you might have a photo shoot, and then I'd be like, "Oh, this looks like this," and then someone else would be like, "Well, I look at it this way." So the ability for people to be able to convey and portray emotions or evoke emotions from people is like, I think that's really rewarding
It's a
to
skill.
people.
It's a skill, and we all, like in life, I feel like we all bring certain things out of each other, even the things that we don't necessarily agree with, and the things that we do agree with. It gives us a familiarity of our belief system. So whenever I feel like I'm consuming something, or feeling like I'm needing to give my attention, I feel like that's always something there that lets me know what am I choosing to identify with, and what I'm choosing to not be a part of what I think I should be identifying with. Like, what am I basically, what I'm saying is, what do I feel is truthful to myself? What am I resonating with? What resonates with the world that I'm living in? And I think it's always better just to know what you don't want over knowing exactly what you want. Like,
Mm-hmm.
whenever something happens, it's like, oh, I don't prefer that. I don't really rock with that. I always give a great thank you, because I don't think that that's something that should be reiterated twice. Why do you going to keep getting things presented to you that you, or giving attention to things that you don't necessarily prefer? And life's
Right,
just going to continue to just bring you things you don't prefer if you keep looking at it. If you
right.
keep bringing the attention. So I always like how in art it gives us so many shits that we do not prefer.
Mm-hmm.
We so many people who are in the industry where it's like, yeah, I don't really rock with that. I don't really fuck with that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care about that person. I don't really care about that idea. And it just goes to show like where our perspectives can be married in the same sense, but still give it a meaning of art. Still give it its respect, its texture, its understanding. So I like it, man.
Yeah, it's funny when so when I was in again taking that art history class, I think there's a lot of people who are could be snobby when it comes to art.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people who try to interpret it. It's like again, could be. I'm not well versed enough in it to say, and I know that there's some people that can look at certain paintings and then educate you on certain aspects of it. There was a guy in my class, teacher's calling roll, right? And he's like, Diego? And I was like, present. And then the other guy's just like, present. He's like, oh, we have 2 Diegos? He's just like, I only have one on the like roll sheet. He's just like, I don't know, let's say his name was Broderick. He's like, well, my name is Broderick. He's like, but people call me Diego because of Diego Rivera. And he's just like, so I don't know if he wants to go by another name. He's just like, do you have a middle name? And I was just like, yeah, no, dude. Like, I'm going to go by my actual name. We will call you something else.
Messed up thing is we've all seen that.
Dude, and one time the teacher was going over an art piece, and he's just like, so like, what do you guys feel like about this art piece or like whatever? And the guy's like, oh, I get a sense of foreboding. And everybody in the class was like, what? And then the teacher, again, you can tell that this kid just was like really into art and was trying to use words that maybe didn't even make sense to describe something. And I remember the teachers being like, oh, okay, like, sure. And that interpretation or that snobbiness of like, oh, they're trying to do this, they're trying to do that. It's just like, come on, guy. And then there's just certain things, again, where it comes to preference and when it comes to subjective taste. I like art, a certain style of art. And there's certain things that to me, it's just like, I don't get it. I went to the MoMA or the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. It's like, that's a fucking box. That's what it is. Like, you can't color that up and tell me it's something different. But I guess, right? Some people just like, oh, it's abstract or like, oh, it's this. And this is like, no, it's not. It's not. Like, that's just a beam, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's other things that like people can create. And to me, that has a little bit more value than just being like abstract. And I'm like, that doesn't really make sense to me. But again, that's just my opinion on certain things.
Yeah, I mean, on the surface level, you know, they always say art imitates life.
Mm-hmm.
But what really imitates art? What the only thing that can imitate, I feel, art would be, again, just finding that perspective. And that's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing. All of that is just nothing. We all find ways to give something when in reality, it's nothing until we actually give it a meaning.
Right.
You have to create that space. And when you walk into a space, when you're finding, when somebody's walking into a space, trying to tell somebody what their meaning is,
mm-hmm.
the guy is like, oh, my name's Diego, but I go by François.
Yeah.
François from France. It's like, well, why would you go like that? Oh, because it inspires. It's like you're trying to come into a place already with the with an objective.
Mm-hmm.
You're coming with an objective and an objective state of being where this is what I need to be seen as, this is what it is,
mm-hmm.
and this is what it has to be. Otherwise, it's invalid. So I feel to say that I feel like the only thing that can intimidate art in a sense is an invalidated sense of meaning.
Right.
It's like you're just trying to, if you're trying to imitate art, you're just giving yourself an invalidated because you want to become art. You want to be seen as art. So you yourself haven't given yourself validation to just exist as what it is.
Right. Trying to identify yourself with a particular idea that you put in your head
mm-hmm.
of who you may be, or certain like art.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the things that I remember about that class was, I believe it's Marcel Duchamp, to where all these people were interpreting art and, you know, getting a little bit snobby about it. So what he did is I think he took a urinal, put it upside down, and that was like his like fuck you to the art world. And people were like, oh, it's so this and it's so that. It's just like, no, dude. It's like, I literally just did this to show how dumb you guys are.
Bro.
Or, and I don't remember if it was Jackson Pollock or somebody, but I think I remember hearing a story where, again, around that era, what he did is he just took a satin handkerchief, finished on it, and then like put it up, and people were like, oh, it's this and that. And he's just like, again, like a fuck you mm-hmm. to your guys' interpretation. It's like, I'm the artist. I'm the one who did this, but you guys are trying to take it to like this all other level and trying to seem more sophisticated and trying to give it different meaning.
Absolutely. And when we understand that
excuse me,
just giving something nothing is more than enough. Don't give it anything. Don't try to make it into something. Understand it already has its value, where its placement is, and then try to gain an understanding of it. It's like, so trying to give something a meaning it loses its understanding. So I try to just understand what's being said, understand where certain ideas are coming from, over feeling like I have to fill in the blanks. This is a lesson. This is an opportunity for me to tell people what I know, show people who I am,
Right.
give people what they're missing. It's like, okay, well, tell us what we're missing.
And that's subjective.
Exactly, bro.
I look at it this way. I think that's a beam. You think it is, I don't know, something else.
I get an argument with somebody who will never admit that you're right. Because they always try to race around. That's how it's a lot with women. The thing about it is, man, like, I love women. I'm sure any guys who would watch this that understand that their relationship with the women has texture. We all have different experiences and different things that women have said or done that have created us to function around women in a certain way. No different than anybody who is dated in any type of industry, and wherever your preference is. Relationships sometimes, I feel, teach us a lot about who we aren't over who we are. So when we find art in a relationship, like identifying with art, I think that that's a cool way to see how somebody's way of thinking and their personality conveys what their life experience is, because when you see art, it opens up to their real perspective of life. Like, that's not just a picture of James Dean. That's James, right? So,
yeah, James Dean.
So we both know our shit. But someone's like, yeah, that white guy right there.
Right.
It's like, it's not about whether or not they have a name or a sense of an objective point of view, but it's just having the relationship honestly with what it is. It's just having an honest relationship. I'm not going to say, that's a young Elvis. It's like, no, that's James Dean. No, that's Elvis. And you're going to keep arguing about it being Elvis when we can confirm that it's James Dean.
Right.
So why would we go into a relationship arguing with somebody about something that we know is more truthful itself when there's a lie attached to it, and then you end up falling in love with this lie, falling in love with this sense of this you get conformed into
or a narrative.
Yeah, are a part of a narrative. Like relationships, I feel it's like you see a lot of guys who are just a part of a narrative, and it's not a relationship, it's a narrative. So I think that art exposes if a relationship is for the understanding of the person, or if it's for the narrative to convey a union. Something along those lines. Right. I got out of a relationship years ago. I've been in many relationships, but one thing that got me on my path, like really getting into myself, was understanding what relationships really were. Like, really, like, what is a relationship actually when you really think about it?
What did you come up with?
I'm still coming up, and I realize it's nothing. A relationship isn't nothing, because it's all meaning. It all has a meaning of what we are in the setting of who we are, and we are always subject to change. Who you were today is not who you were yesterday, and yesterday is gone. So if yesterday doesn't exist and all we have is the present, who were we ever? And who are we ever going to be if we don't just be in the present? So therefore, a relationship to me doesn't mean necessarily what we are for each other. It's how we are for each other, and how we are being how we are being in the relationship with one another in that present moment. So that's why I take my relationships more serious, because forgiving, grace, all that stuff, people not attaching to so much other stuff, because again, most of those things don't exist if you don't just attach to the associative memory of it and just fall back in love with the present.
Right.
That's how I feel about relationships, or what I felt with, because if you think about it, a lot of times people just, their whole new way of navigating the relationship is all depicted upon past. What you did to me 3 days ago, what you did to me 5 years ago, what happened to me when I was 12.
The idea that I think a lot of it has to do with the idea that people think a relationship is, or what it should be.
Yeah, it's most of it becomes a narrative. It just becomes more and more of a story of who can be right, who can tell us that is not what it is, who can say, well, agreeing to disagree only goes so far if you don't fall in love with what it is, what it always was. If we just say, oh, let's just agree to disagree that nothing ever happened, if you don't agree that nothing ever happened, then how will you ever find the sense of meaning of the nothing behind it? How will you ever find the sense of meaning where that thing or that association taught you what it is to be here now? Because if you don't give it anything from then, doesn't necessarily mean you have to attach or detach from it. It's just that you have to take the learning lesson. So I feel like that's a lot where we find ourselves trying to juggle. It's like we haven't learned. There's no learning behind what it is that is bringing us all together. It's all just trying to fit whatever it is that perspective is, was, or used to be in order to get us where we need to be or where we want to go.
Right. I think when it comes to a relationship, I think there's, it depends on how people look at it. Again, it goes back to perspective. Did you learn from it?
Yeah.
Right. Because sometimes people will think, I talked to someone recently, it's just like, oh, I wasted 5 years of my life. And I'm like, did you?
Did you waste?
I was like, exactly.
Where's the spill? I'll help you clean it up.
Exactly.
Do we have bounty?
So did you not learn anything from it?
Yeah.
Hopefully more about yourself than anything else.
Amen.
And like through failed relationships, I think you understand more of, like you said, the learning about what you want, but I think it's very important to understand what you don't want. Exactly. Right? I remember telling my brother when I was in like my 20s about what I wanted to do with my life. And it's like, well, you could do this. I remember him telling me, he's like, why don't you go back to college and like try I'm like, I already did that. Like I already dabbled and looked at things to, get a little bit of this or a little bit of that, and maybe that gives you an idea. So if you don't know what you want to do, why don't we start eliminating by the things we don't want to do? This is like, all right, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do that. So then that kind of makes it a little bit easier to find what you do want.
Absolutely.
And then it's the same thing with like relationships. I think as you get older or as you have certain relationships, it's just like, I didn't like this or this didn't really click with my personality and my way of being. So I know that I don't want this type of partner. I don't want this in my relationship. So that makes it a little bit easier to find out what you do want by understanding what you don't want. And then again, you don't have to, but I think you do find a way to learn about yourself through those failed relationships. And if you feel like you've learned this, it's like, maybe it didn't pan out to be what you want or what you hoped it were going to be, what it was going to be. But at the same time, it's like that makes you better for the next partner or the relationship that you may get into. And a lot of people ask me, why don't you have a girlfriend? I was like, what's wrong with you? Right?
I love that one.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, so what's going on? How come you're not in a relationship? And I always give the same answer. It's like, I'm very particular about who and what I invest my time into. So I'm very intentional about how I spend my time and the meaning that I give to a relationship. And I think a lot of people, again, the idea of a relationship or what that relationship may bring is why sometimes people get into relationships before they're actually ready to, right? Or some people may have certain issues that allow them to maneuver in a certain way. Codependency issues, or like I'm at this point in my life, so I should be either married or have a partner, or I should have like certain things. And it's just like, nah, I'm going to take that real slow, because the relationship, I'm not saying whoever I'm in a relationship with, I'm in a relationship in or with is going to be the person that I marry. But there's definitely, I have to see room for a potential future.
Yeah.
Because the ultimate relationship is whoever you're going to spend the rest of your life with and go through the ups and downs that life has to offer. And I got to make sure that that person is the correct person. And there has to be, I think, an acute sense of what that future is going to kind of like hold and who you want to spend that future with. And I'm in control of that. So I don't jump into them quickly. It's like, again, I'll give everyone like a chance. And it's just like, okay, can I see myself, again, going through life with this person? And even though there might not be anything wrong when we get along or this or that, it's just like, nah, it's not it though. It's like, for me, like, it needs to be it.
It's got to be it. It's got to be the one.
Exactly. And if it's not, I will, I like to be honest and transparent. I don't want to mislead anybody and have to tell someone like, hey, like, I've enjoyed getting to know you, right? And, or if, like, sometimes I feel when maybe they might have stronger feelings than you.
Mm.
So it's like, hey, I don't want to mislead, right? So it's like, this is where I'm at right now. I'm not saying that it's not going to lead to anything, but right now, I don't think it's leading to what maybe you think it is.
Right.
At least not yet. I just want to make sure that I'm being honest with you and respectful of your time.
Mm-hmm.
And then, keep on figuring it out until you find that person, that one that you're going to, again, decide to take on life with.
That's you hit a lot of great bars, even the codependency thing. I think sometimes that's where guys don't want to admit that that's sometimes what it is that causes this repetitiveness of being in and out of things that don't necessarily align with you, because you haven't necessarily learned how to sit with yourself. You can't really sit with yourself enough, so you need someone else to sit with, so you can observe and put that energy over there, give that focal point, illuminate those things. There's a whole saying that goes, whatever you shine your light on illuminates. So sometimes we haven't necessarily put the light on our shadow so we can see the fullness and walk into that, turn into light, so that everything else around us becomes a representation of what it is that we can truly find of joy and of purpose and of peace and of learn. And we have learned from how to have that relationship with those shadows. Mm-hmm. Because if you can't love it, if you can't understand it, then you're just going to neglect it, reject it, and try to find ways to cope with it. And I think sometimes that's what happens with people, especially guys. Like I say for myself, mm-hmm. It's a learning process that you're not going to learn in your household. Your father's not going to be able to necessarily teach you that. You're not going to learn that from being under the hood of a car or trying to find money in a job and stuff like that. These are things that we have to actually say that this is something I'm choosing to give a priority to focus on when it comes down to knowing who I am as myself.
Correct. And not dependent on other people or other things.
Dog.
Because it becomes... I think that's also one of the things that I tell people is like, I'm real comfortable being alone. I'm like, I would like for someone to add to it, but like, this cup is full.
Yeah.
A job isn't going to fill it for me. Yeah. Money isn't going to fill it for me. A partner isn't going to fill it for me. This cup is all the way full on my own.
Yeah.
And
it overfloweth.
Correct. And now someone wants to add a little flavor to that cup, right? If I'm going to use what are they called, like Mios or whatever, the little juice.
Do I have any liquid IV here? I should give you some liquid.
Right? Yeah. Because I was like, if you're going to be liquid IV and you're going to add to it,
see if I can gift you some liquid. If I do have this, bro, if I have it. Oh, a gift for you, my friend.
See, if this is going to be my partner and you're going to add to what I already have, then I'm all for it. But it's not going to be, again, my happiness is not going to be dependent on this. Mm-hmm. Right? Where I think a lot of people, and it doesn't always necessarily have to be a relationship. Again, it could be either material things or something else. But I always tell people, it's just like, I'm real good at being on my own. Like, I like myself. I like being by myself. I like my independence. I like me, right? And I don't feel like anybody else is going to complete me. Your boy's complete.
Right.
Already complete.
Right.
So I think a lot of the times people will source other things or other people to give themselves that value. And I'm guilty of it too. Sometimes we need validation, right? Whether it's feeling good about yourself because knowing that you can still attract the opposite sex, or people find you interesting, or all these like other things. But a lot of the times I think I say that they monkey bar. Yeah. You're not even done with one relationship before you're in another one.
That's a great way to put it.
I had to tell somebody recently that's like, I don't think it would be a good time for us to get to know each other right now. Like, you're freshly out of a relationship. Like, I try not to date girls who are fresh out of a relationship.
My friend, you have discernment. Discernment. Mm-hmm. It's you can continue, but I'm saying that's people understand. They want wisdom, but wisdom without discernment is honestly it's foolishness, because you're not you're choosing to be wise off your own knowledge and understanding. You're not truly choosing where it is you need to practice intentionality, and also where the focus should be more about the other and not. It should be more not about the other, but more so about the outer, the everything. It's everything that's around you, because sometimes we make choices that only are good for us, and then we forget about what it actually does. So when you make selfish choices, I feel like that's a lack of discernment.
Correct.
So discernment, I feel, is what you're saying about dealing with people who monkey bar. It's that you're choosing to keep going on to the next, making actions that aren't fulfilling a good place for everything else that around you and what's been left behind. It's just leaving a bunch of clutter that's going to eventually catch up to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it ends up being where, have you had the ample time to process and heal the end of that relationship? And I jokingly, but also seriously, I tell people, anybody going to chase me around if they see us hanging out? Right?
Yeah.
And, oh, no, he would never do that. Right? And I'm like, you don't know that. You don't know that. But also, it is, if it's fresh out of a relationship, it's like, is it a rebound? Right? Are you just doing this to forget about someone else? Is it going to be a month later, you guys are back together? Is it all the things that kind of can come with fresh out of a relationship? Is like, I'd rather not put myself in that position. Right?
Yeah.
And then, have you healed? Oh, I'm the one who broke up with him. That doesn't mean you don't need healing. Right? Just because you ended it doesn't mean that you don't need to heal and be good within yourself, because there are 5 stages of grief. And we need to go through those 5 stages of grief, even though no one has died, but a relationship died. You guys were a part of each other's lives for the last 5 years. You had hopes, you had dreams, and now it's not. So there is probably some grief and some things that you need to get over before you can move on to the next person with your best foot forward, the best version of yourself.
Yes.
So if it's fresh out of a relationship, it's like, I don't know if you were able to do that at all times.
That's, man, bro. Dude, you say that in such a very educated and understanding way, because that's something that I not only experienced, but what I also learned when I was getting in and out of my previous relationships. I noticed the habits of just that monkey bar. You know, you go on even something as simple as a date, something as simple as, like, you know, just opening the door. You're not just opening up the door to yourself to give access, but you're also inviting yourself into that world of, yo, somebody will chase me around. Should I be asking questions right now? And then it's that discernment of trusting your intuition of whether or not you're living in a truthful space. And I think that that's where sometimes we find ourselves so confused, is because we end up like covering that internal voice. We just put a lid on that on that place where we can't hear our true self speak. It's like, hey, I need some time. I need I need to breathe a little bit. It becomes a flesh, not the spirit.
And then and flesh. Who doesn't like flesh?
Man, bro, I mean, flesh can get us in trouble.
It does get us in trouble, and it can. And that's one of the things where it's very important for us to be able to identify certain aspects of it. Because sometimes it's like, well, sometimes people break up with someone and then immediately after you find, you know, the person that you're going to like be with. And I'm like, yeah, that's possible.
Yeah.
But at the same time, not likely, in my opinion.
Dog, it goes back to, like, we just go with the narrative. You're just pushing forth a narrative, and it doesn't necessarily become about being in the present and understanding what it is the relationship is supposed to thrive off of. It's like all about writing out how I need to look, or how I need to feel, or how people need to see me,
or the vision that I had of myself or of my life.
A mood board.
Yeah, yes, exactly. People who are like, I think as anybody else, but more so women, you have a biological clock. So it's just like, hey, I'm X amount of years old. So like, this is gonna happen or what? I don't know yet, right? Or when people ask me, it's just like, what are you looking for? Depends. Depends on the person.
Yeah.
Depends on how we get on. I've had relationships where it is 100% platonic because it's like, oh yeah, I don't feel that. You're cool as fuck though, and I like all these different aspects about you. So it could be more of a platonic relationship, or maybe this is just gonna be a physical thing, right? We can have some fun, or it can be the endless possibilities that life has to offer. Well, I don't know yet. I don't know what I'm looking for. Depends on the person. I'll know once we get to know each other. So to me, like, I need to meet somebody in person, right? Because again, you might be cool as shit over text. It might be funny, but then when we meet, it just doesn't click. You just don't vibe.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like I would prefer to meet you quickly and soon to see it to say like, all right, I like what we experienced when we hung out for the 15-20 minutes that we got coffee. I want to continue to maybe explore that option. And other people, it's just like, yeah, you look like your pictures. You're not catfishing me. Cool.
Yeah.
But it's just not there.
It's like, when your experience with credit history, would you say that there's certain things that have to be recorded in order to give somebody that place of knowing who they are and trusting whether or not it is okay to move forward? Do you feel like that's something that is valid in relates to like finding a relationship? Do you kind of think that there's a thing where guys have to practice understanding where it is to fill those check marks and to see what that history looks like?
Yeah, I think just like in credit, history being the biggest percentage of what represents credit, it's you need to take an inventory of your history.
Yeah.
And then how is that history going to potentially affect your future? I've done that where even now, talking with someone or hanging out with someone, and I'm like, oh, fuck, I don't know if I'm feeling it, right? But I don't always want to make a quick decision. I'm like, am I holding on to something from my previous relationship? I'll analyze that shit. I'll meditate on it. I'll ride my bike and think about it. That's why I like cardio so much.
Yeah.
It gives me the opportunity to think, especially like being on the bike, no music, just thinking and being like, all right, let me analyze this. Am I just being a little bit too quick to make a judgment on certain things? Is it something from my previous relationship, or is it really what it is and I'm just not feeling it? I need to analyze it. I need to look at my previous relationships. I need to look at my past. I also need to look at my present. This is going to line up with my potential future. Like, where am I at in life right now? And then I need to use all of that information. I'm very logistical. I try to make sure that, again, I think there's obviously two parts of us as humans. Well, multiple parts, but it's like you have emotion, you have your heart, and then you have your brain, which is logic. I try to make sure that they're both in line.
They're in unison.
Yeah. Correct. You're like both functioning. Because something might make sense. The brain might tell you she has these qualities, these attributes, all these things on paper.
Yeah.
Right. But if the feeling is not there, right?
Yeah.
Or you might have a feeling and be like, dang it, I've never felt pterodactyls in my stomach before. But does this make sense? So I try to make sure that they're both coinciding as far as my decision on how that relationship is going to go and where I take it, or where it can potentially, where we take it. Because it's not just up to me. It depends. It's a two-party system.
Amen. And there's a lot of things to talk about, in therapy and counseling and stuff, the IFS, internal family structure. So like when you have all of these different components that make up the mechanism to what, gets to your brain, and then you have the neurotransmitters, neuropesticides, and the cerebellum that processes and give you your full reality. Like, you have to be aware of what's being chemicalized in your body over the course of time that is creating this character to make these types of choices. So where then you have to look and analyze the history of your choices and say, okay, well, what am I putting in me? What am I consuming? What am I allowing myself to feel and see and continue to digest that is giving me the results of my life in a way of relationships, money, um, physicality, all kinds of things that allow us to live and have the experience of life the way we want. We have to take that inventory of what's being digest. And that internal family structure, I feel, is what actually gives us that truth. Like credit, man. Like I've learned a lot when we were talking about credit. I was like, damn it, this guy Diego gets it, because you can't. One of my mentors, Garen Jones, is one of a great truth speaker, and he has an amazing artist power awakening camp and a retreat experience that helps you find your inner child and fight for that back. And he said that, if you do one thing one way, you're gonna do it the other.
How you do things one way, you do everything.
You do one thing one way, you do it the same way everywhere else. It's because you haven't gotten to the discipline of not applying even that anywhere. So if you can lie right here, you're gonna lie everywhere else. And if you have the opportunity to give you're gonna lie because you already know how to use it. But what happens when we go back to our tool shed when that tool is not even there and we no longer give ourselves the access to use it? It's like it's out of the box. Then how does that change the outcome of the subject or whatever it is, the art that's being predicted, the art that's being projected in a real life matter? What happens when you remove all those characteristics, when you remove those little things in the internal family structure, like lying, like discernment? You remove the things like what is another one you could remove? You could remove, losing my train of thought here, removing negative thoughts, removing anything that you feel is not necessarily giving you what you desire. Like you just say like, okay, I don't necessarily identify with thinking this way anymore. So therefore I'm no longer going to give myself that option. So giving myself the option to even think about a lie is not even an option. So how does that change the character? So I think that that's something that I feel when we implement these things into our history and take that accountability to know what it is that we're actually choosing, that's what gives us our actual results of how we truthfully can be and who we are, opposed to giving ourselves the freedom to just do whatever we want.
And it does boil down to choice.
It does. It's always a choice, especially with guys. Like our choices definitely have a resonancy on how the world has been. Like this world that we're living in can say, "Oh, world's shit, blah blah blah." It's like, well, who are the men? Where are the men? Where are our founding fathers?
What example are you following?
Yeah, bro.
And what example can you leave? Like one of the things that I had done, my mom has had a nonprofit with personal development workshops, right? So like effective communication, inner child. There's one that's called The Only Diet. So it has nothing to do with food. It has to do with letting go of all these emotional baggage that we have, right? And I remember doing one with my mom like a few years ago. And then her asking me, it's just like, okay, so like, what is it that you like want? And I was like upset because I told her, I was like, this isn't the first time that we do this. And I was like, and it's hard for me to identify what I want. And I'm like, that's not going to work for me. Like, let's say I wanted, because it's like it's called the wheel of life, and there's 8 different aspects of it, right? So like personal time, family, work, all these like different things. So if I wanted to focus on like, let's say my finances, and I wanted to make $100,000 a year, so it's like, I know how to reverse engineer a goal. How many clients does that take? How many this? How many that? Like I already know how to do that, Mom. I was like, but that doesn't work for me. She's like, well, shut up and let me finish my question. It's like, what do you want from this? Why are you doing this? Why are you always trying to do like these like goal setting things, or like, what's the point behind it? And then I was just like, I just want to be a good example. She's like, write that down on your paper. And I was just like, oh. She's like, who do you want to be a good example for? And then I was just like, my nieces. right? Or how to be a good son, like a good brother, like all these like different things. And then that's how we were able to formulate my goals, my plan, and what that entails. So being able to identify things again, like on what you want, and then how you look at things. Again, the intention behind like the words that we look at, right? He makes me mad. He doesn't make you anything. You get mad when he does this, right? If you're looking at it that way, it's like you have to accept responsibility of your actions and also your feelings. You're in charge of your feelings to an extent, right? Some things we just feel, but you don't make me feel anything. I feel based on maybe something that you may have done, but getting real clear with, again, what you view things at. What examples that you said like that we have that our fathers or our family members, our elders, our community has bestowed upon us. But there is a excuse me.
You're good.
Like you were saying about the Jesus, sorry. Like a recipe. One of the podcasts that I did with a guy said the same recipe in two hands doesn't taste the same.
Mm-hmm.
So, like childhoods, you and your brother might have grown up in the same childhood, but your perspective of it is different based on your perspective and how you viewed it and where you were at that point in your life. So it's all choice of how you look at things.
Yes.
And perspective. You can change it on your own.
Absolutely.
So it's like, I'd rather focus on the positive.
Absolutely. And it goes back to that roadmap. Like, what route are you choosing to get to your destination?
Mm-hmm.
And the things that are passing you by, how are these things resonating with the route that you're choosing? Do you like the scenery that's happening as you're going along your roadmap? Does it resonate with you in a way that gives you ability to learn, understand, and see that you can practice discernment? Or is it just giving you a road that you can just continue to be free and choose to do what you want and not take accountability for what's happening around? So I always believe in, like, any place that I go, any place that I touch, I always try to leave a gift behind. I always try to leave something good behind, because anytime I'm coming back across that, I know that I contributed something of value to that place and to that route that changes how my relationship is with it. Mm-hmm. So sometimes people don't make a relationship with their roadmap. They just want to get to the destination, mm-hmm. and they end up just letting all these things just continue to pass by and not necessarily give it any of the meaning or the value that it could actually deserve, because they don't feel like they understand the meaning of what they're taking themselves in on that space. So there's all different things that we can continue to flesh on, but that's why I like when you said the roadmap. I'm all like, this is exactly what I needed to hear in terms of like your history of your credit on building things up. Things can always get better, but you have to go with the roadmap. Mm-hmm. You have to have a roadmap that allows you to not only take the accountability, but take these lessons with you on this route and continue to instill and plant the gifts that have meaning. And those gifts, I feel, are just the ones that you feel are giving value to the journey. You know,
the journey is that word in and of itself, I think, is so important, because, again, like you said, destination and journey are different things.
Yep.
Destination might not be what you expected it to be when you get there. So you got to focus on the journey.
Yeah, man, that's dark.
It's one of the ways that I think we are able to lead a fulfilling and happy life. It's like, it's that journey, your perspective of how you are in that journey. There's a book called Inferno by Dante.
I'm gonna pick it up.
So it's called The Divine Comedy, and I think it was like 1490s or something like that when it was written. And then Inferno is the guy going through the 7 depths of hell, right? But he has a guy named Virgil, and he's a poet, and he's the one who translates a lot of the things for him. And I've referenced it to a lot of people who are going through a difficult time, mm-hmm. right? Because when he goes through the 7 layers of hell, it's people, in pain and agony, and there's ghouls, and there's all this negative stuff. And it's like, okay, you're in hell. Are you going to focus on it? Are you going to be like, damn, that guy's hanging. Damn, that guy this. That. It's just like, are you focusing on that? Or are you just knowing that that's where you're at right now, but you're going to get out of it eventually? It's like, how are you looking at that journey that you're currently in? Because this guy literally goes through whatever the 7 or 9 depths of hell. Because it's like, if he focused on it, it'd be a different book, right? He eventually gets out of it. But he's not in there. He recognizes where he's at. He's in hell. But he doesn't focus on it. He focuses on his guide. He focuses on Beatrice, his love that he's trying to get to. So it's, what is your perspective and how are you viewing things? And when times are shitty, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You're going to notice it, but do you dwell on it? Do you want to prioritize those negative feelings? Or again, do you just want to recognize that they're there and then focus on the positive? Like, eventually, I'm going to get out of here. Right?
Yeah. That's the thing about planting those choices on the journey, whether or not you feel they're going to allow you to learn the betterment in it. The best thing that can ever happen is the fact that it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So to take on something that is happening through the journey and through it means that you're alive, that you can experience it, that you can have a choice. When you can no longer make a choice, you can consider your journey done. There's people out there who can't make choices anymore. People are making the choices for them. They're telling you where you're going to go, what you're going to do, what you're going to eat, and how you're going to live for the rest of your days. That's when you lose your life.
And even then, even if someone is telling you what say you're in prison, you're getting told when you wake up, when you go to sleep, when you eat, all those different things. Or again, when I mentioned Frank Vogel, The Meaning of Life. There's a guy who survived the Auschwitz.
Yes, I know Frank Vogel.
And where even in the most horrific of circumstances, like, I mean, he made it out. And then again, it was just like, what was he focusing on when he was in the shittiest place on earth? Even though he was being told when to eat, what to do, what not to do, he didn't have, let's say, a lot of liberty. He did have choice of perspective and how he viewed things. So as long as you're breathing, you have the opportunity to make certain decisions and be in control of certain aspects of it. And as long as you're breathing, you can learn and you can change, right? Learning doesn't stop when you're done with school. It stops when you decide to stop learning. And you can learn to be happy, I think. I think that's a learned behavior.
Yeah.
You can learn to be happy. You can learn to focus on the proper things to make a shitty situation just not as shitty.
Amen.
So it's like, again, where do you focus your energy? Where do you put your thoughts in any given situation? You choose. Choose to be happy. And amidst any type of situation, excuse me, that you can think of.
Yes.
So it's part of that roadmap that we all, I think, need to have. And that's your own roadmap. Everybody has their own Thomas guide. And even though you don't know where that destination is, you kind of do. It's death. You're going to die. That's a final destination. We're all going to die. So as you're going along through that same place that we're all going to be, 6 feet under, it's just like start carving out your own roadmap.
Yeah.
And I know that you had mentioned to me that you wanted to help provide people with a roadmap, right? So tell me a little bit about that.
The roadmap that I would like to leave people with, because again, the thing is, it gets to a point in time where we are no longer going to be able to express ourselves. We have to leave behind what we've expressed. So the roadmap that I feel like I've always wanted to leave behind is I've been trying to give people my gift of mentally going along a journey that doesn't allow you to lose yourself, or allows you the opportunity to lose yourself, but also to refine it. So it's refining whether or not you're being truthful in your craft. And my workshop, I try to make sure I'm not necessarily giving people I'm not trying to give people a answer. I'm trying to present them with the options that keep them aware of what they're choosing and where they're going, but don't but again, with the boundary of not letting them fall too far off of their path. Because if I give people something and I just say, hey, here's what you need to do and here's what you don't want to do, you're not learning. You're just being guided.
You're giving
okay.
someone fish.
Yeah, so I'm trying to teach people really how to fish with their choices and lead them to the seeing where the fruits of their labor are going to actually land them. And with the experience and guidance that I've had, that's one thing that I've always wanted to have. I wish I had a roadmap where people were telling me that this is something that would teach me how to actually feed and fish. When I started feeding for myself. So I had a manager at one point in time that was all about just, you got to go get that job. You got to go do whatever you can just to book the job, book the job, book the job. I'm all like, well, what if me booking that job doesn't necessarily give me the gratification of where the money is, where the opportunity is? What if I'm being left of just a vessel?
Gratification or fulfillment?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Gratification or fulfillment. Yes, sir. And I never had anybody to talk to about that. I didn't have my agents to talk to. I would tell my agents and my manager about like, oh man, like I don't necessarily just feel the best, like, going to see these people. I don't like being in this environment. Well, look, it's a job. You're getting in the clients, you're going into the spaces, you're being used, they like you. I'm all like, but it's not filling me. It's not giving me anything that I feel I can actually move with or move from. So I had to go and learn what was actually giving me fulfillment along my journey. So I have a roadmap for my students and stuff where I tell them, like, you can avoid the experiences of shooting with certain photographers and getting to these certain people by coming in a community where you already have a house of trust, a trusted map, and a trusted place where people are just going to guide you and propel you into a direction that's going to lead you to a sense of fulfillment and actual where you're learning who you are without having to have the experience of, oh man, that didn't go the way I wanted it to go. That didn't feel right. And that's how sometimes our parents are teachers. It's like, just go ahead and learn on your own. It works. It's great. But if you can have access to a community that doesn't propose that route itself, but gives you the options to still choose the route you want to go, I would say you can know that door is open to that community. So that's the thing that I kind of like to do. I like to give people the understanding that if you are guided along this way, along your journey, and you see an In-N-Out burger and you see those fans, those little energy fans, and you see a community over here that you can walk into and explore and see what it has to offer, that's kind of like what I do. So I like to just be present enough to build something and build a community that allows people to know that that's something that exists. And when they get invited in and have it, they just know that they come with a good source of people, photographers, people who know credit, people who know about finance, people who know about tech, people who know about web design, people who know about all this, that allow you to further give you what it is that's going to be in your tool shed, so you can know how to eat. You just know where to fish from. You just know where you can feed yourself over trying to find what happens when that well dries out. What happens when that well is done? You get into the place like, well, we ain't got nothing else for you. There's always going to be something for you if you just stay on that path that allows yourself to have access to that community. You always know you can go, when you can come back home, you can just make a little pit stop. That's the kind of roadmap that I like, because I think that that's the thing that makes us all more important when it comes down to life, is when we have a sense of direction.
It's I think it sounds a little bit similar on what I tell our clients. It's like, my job is to provide you with information so you can make informed decisions. Right? And you have wealth of knowledge and an experience, right? And what may be fulfilling to you may not be fulfilling to the next, but there's certain things that are kind of general, where it's like, in my experience, these are some of the things that may be objectively beneficial. Again, knowing that the photographer has, X, Y, Z, or like I said, like web design, or all these different things, so that you can get whatever fulfillment you're trying to get at as little expense to you as possible. Not monetary expense, but, gratification, or again, if you're doing a photo shoot and it's not what you wanted, you didn't get fulfilled, you didn't get to let's say, express your artistic side, whatever it might be. But that's, I think, so important for where it's like, yeah, you can learn on your own,
Yeah.
right? But there's certain things where I use the example. It's like, can I move a couch? Yes. Would it be easier if I had help? Yeah.
Of course.
So do
Is
I
that a
want?
vape, by the way?
Yeah.
Can I have some?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you, bro.
It's
Swag.
when you have resources.
Miami Mint.
I hate that it's so big and that it lights up. It's not discreet at all.
I haven't had one of these in a minute, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't. These are kind of fulfilling. I like.
I hate that I like them so much.
It's cool. I like it, bro.
Yeah.
Like these are. You're okay in my book, Diego.
And that's one of the things where it's just like sometimes, and one of the things that I forgot to mention earlier, where it is, I forget the name of the author, but there's a book called Atomic Habits, right? And the guy talks about one of the easiest way to be able to establish a new habit is to identify with a certain aspect of it, right? And a personality trait.
Yeah.
You don't want to read a book. You want to be a reader. You don't want to run a mile. You want to be a runner. Identifying with certain things. And sometimes it's not good, in my opinion. I'm like, I'm just someone who smokes.
Honestly,
and it's like,
it's dabbling with discernment.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, if you know it's not messing you up, and you're able to see that it's not like causing you to vibe off the path, you can keep vibing.
I'll justify it.
Yeah,
I'll be like, yo, I can still run the Claremont Loop without stopping. So my lungs ain't bad.
Dog. It's like, and I'm still getting shit done.
Mm-hmm. And it's, again, like that, identifying with certain parts of it, which, again, obviously this isn't good for me, but I'm like, I can look at it as however I want to.
I went into my dad's cab the other day and I had a drink. Is drinking really good for you? Or is it just something that you can have along the way that just helps you just find a sense of peace, finding a sense of just...
If it doesn't impede on positive things, there's nothing wrong with it, I think.
I agree.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, you're not getting in trouble, you're not driving, you're not, doing it excessively. It's like, again, is it good for you? No. But is it horrible for you under certain circumstances? No. Like, if you can control it and if you can look at different aspects of it, why not?
Yeah.
Do what makes you happy and choose your view on things, right? I think a lot of people, again, sometimes we have that very quick negative outlook on like certain things.
Yeah.
Even on like things that we like say, like, for example, like my dad the other day, he spilled something, right? And his immediate reaction was like, pendejo, like dumbass.
Yeah.
I'm like, why are you calling yourself dumb? Right? And I get what he's saying.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just a natural and a very quick reaction. But he's like, fucking dumbass. I'm like, call yourself a dumbass. I'm like, it's mistakes. It happens. But it is, again, try to look at it in a different aspect, a positive light, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But it's nice to know that there are a lot of people like you who what they're trying, because I was telling my brother when you came in, I think kind of like the same thing where it is the energy that someone gives, and I was like, dude, he was super fucking nice. And I was just like, very, like, I think as you came in, you had already thanked me for my time. We hadn't even started anything. And then you made this gesture. You're like, thank you. And I was like, very genuine, very open, very nice. And you are also trying to, like you said, leave something behind that is positive and to be able to help people. And it's always nice to meet people like that who are genuine souls.
Absolutely.
And who are trying to do good and help others. It was, very nice to have met you. And then obviously to give or to have you give me the opportunity to try to assist you with your finances. Because when someone decides to move forward with us, I'm forever grateful because they're trusting me, my knowledge, and the work that I do to hopefully put them in a different and in a better position.
Right.
So the fact that people have entrusted me with being able to do that, I'm always very grateful for, and I thank you for that.
Oh, I thank you, man. And again, I want to give you your flowers again because it takes time to truly be able to be of value to somebody in their life and to know that you bring value, to offer a service that is of value. So when we make the choices to study, understand, hold accountability, take that inventory, everything else that comes from that, you can't take it as a coincidence when it resonates with you. So when I was looking up places, like, okay, my priority right now is my credit, my finances, my stability. I kind of told you the little things that I kind of where I was focusing on. And you do your research, you go about these things, you make a few phone calls, and you say, okay, well, what feels right? That source signature does not lie. So when you come across those places, it's important that, again, on that roadmap, you leave something of value. You leave something of resonance that mirrors that person's true authenticity, because it's no different than the way you look at it. No different than how I looked at you. I assume that you looked at me because of the fact that I was able to recognize that this isn't a coincidence, that there was something here that I needed to fully just be present in. And again, when you gave me the roadmap and you gave me the credit history, and then you were able to tell me how to do things, I was like, okay, let's go. So I was like, you'll hear from me. We'll talk, make some action. And then what happened? I called you up a few weeks later and said, hey, yo, bro, this happened. I don't know if it was because of this or because of that, but I want to let you know that after our interaction, something great and something positive that I felt I should share with you happened after our meeting. So again, brother, I appreciate you just for having your doors open. We talked about just a community where you could just have a door open. People can come in and have the option to access you. That takes a different level of knowing what your purpose and the value that you're bringing to the earth brings. So you already, just before I even got to you, before I even called you, before you even knew who I was, who you were already on your journey and on your path to wanting to just, hey, I just want to help people. And we had that conversation on my phone. I was like, hey, bro, why did you get into credit? And you told me, it was like, well, man, here's the story. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's a dope story, man. Now I'm very excited to meet you. Now I'm very excited to embrace. So thank you, bro. Thank you, Diego, for just choosing this path that helps people breathe life better.
Yeah, man. It's crazy how that came about. Because again, I wasn't planning. I didn't grow up as a little kid and be like, I want to work with credit. Yeah. Right. It's just something that kind of came into fruition, and I'm glad I've been able to, provide something of value. And I know, it's probably been a little bit longer time than we had anticipated.
Time well spent.
Very much so. But I would also like maybe in sometime in the near future, because I do want to hear more about like how you got into modeling. Because or again, what your experiences were like, right? I even, the story that I posted right now is like, today's guest is not just a model, he's a supermodel. Oh.
Got it. A little salt bay.
Put a little seasoning on it.
Hey.
But again, I would like to eventually be able to hear from you how you got into it, and then how or what it's like to how you got started, what it's been like, and then what you're, because I know you want to have like that workshop, but as far as like as a model, like goals, hopes, and dreams and stuff like that.
I'm still working. Like, we kind of set things up as we go. We don't just wait for when it's time. I think that's one thing when you talk about finance. Don't wait till it's too late. Don't wait to start getting stuff ready. You don't want to go looking for a house before you check your credit.
Correct.
So if we're going to continue to build that credit and trust, credit is trust.
Yes, sir.
See, already learning.
Bro, gold star.
I just, so funny. I just revisited my old middle school summit. summer intermediate, and I brought my old teachers some flowers. I got a chance to talk to some kids. Were so excited. It's like, have you met this person? Have you met that person? It was so cool to like kind of see where kids are kind of wanting to see, because my teacher was referenced me a few times throughout the year. But to get to this point in our day where I was able to talk to you, it's like, we have to develop that level of trust in our life and in our choices and career, on why we chose the career we chose and what actually happened to create that. So I feel like I have a great story on how I got into the industry that I would love to share. And it honestly just comes down to what you were saying, man, just about how to build your credit. And it was like, how much am I going to trust my choices that are going to get me into the place of not just being a model, not just being a supermodel, but just being a whole person that can add substance to the journey and allow people to see how the journey can be fruitful without having a negative connotation on what it is, and at the end of the destination. It's like, if I don't get this, and if I don't get that, if I don't book this, and if I don't end up here, it's a wash. It doesn't mean that. It never meant that to me. I just asked God to be like, yo, just take me to the places where you can allow your voice to resonate and fulfill the rooms and fulfill the spaces. And that's where everything kind of just goes from there, bro.
Yeah, man. Because again, I'm interested in, I like stories.
Yeah, man. We got some movies. You gave me some movies. I'm gonna research some movies from you, bro. And the stories that I have in the industry of how I became what the world would know as who I am, but from how I needed to be in those places, or who I was called to be in those places, is so much different than what I was doing and what I was like being hired for. It's like, it's kind of cool. And I feel like people would understand why I'm the way I am, and why I talk this way, and why you're the way you are, and why you talk this way, why you made your slides the way they are, why I curated my workshop the way it is. It's because we have an experience of trust. It's an experience of, this is what works, this is what got me here, and this is what I can share. You go to someone else, they have a whole different roadmap, and you can choose to which one resonates with you the best, but this is mine. Yeah,
and I think the value, I think everybody has value that they provide, right? And sometimes we feel like we may not, or they don't look at it as it's like, well, I haven't done anything. Or I have certain friends that I'm like, yo, like, let's do a podcast. Well, like, who am I? And I'm like, well, what do you mean, dude? Like, all these different things. Again, a lot of the times we don't hold ourselves in the same regard that other people hold us to. Right. And again, I remember you told me, I think you said Miami first, then Milan, then New York. And it's just like, for someone to be making a living, and not only on how you look, but on how, like you said, how you fill a space. I think it'd be super interesting. Right? So I'd love to have you back, man. What is it like for someone to be able to do that?
Those little interests, like, it's
I think
like,
it'd be super interesting. So I'd love to have you back, man.
Dude, we're coming back. It's those micro moves we talked about.
Yes, sir.
Those little interests, like, it's like, okay, it's like you got three options right here. Who's going to
MCM credit?
Who's going to help you get that house? Diego grows the babe. MVM credit. Now is this like something MCM about credit? So I want to call this
MVM credit
where we grows the babe. MVM credit. Now is this like something about just I want to call this number and see where we can. And the reason why I said MCM, bro, if you aligned and in tune with who you're called to be.
It's on top of mind.
And the reason why I said MCM, bro, I was like, it wasn't on because MVM. I want you to know
it's on top of mind.
I love your company. I was like, it wasn't on purpose. MVM
too.
But I want to let you know, I love your company. I would love MVM is the shit. Tell more and express
MCM too.
Where I've been, but yeah, brother, I would love to come back and tell more and express more about where I've been and what I've encountered to get to a place where I can just give value to the space and your space itself.
Grateful for you to coming in. Thank you for sharing
so much.
All of the things that we talked about.
So much substance.
And that's what I always tell people.
I'm grateful to be here, brother.
Grateful for you to coming in. Thank you for sharing all of the things that we talked about. And that's what I always tell people. It's just like, I don't know what we're going to talk about. Depends on what the conversation is. Part 2 at some point. And I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation that we had. Thank you for your time. I
Amazing.
appreciate it. And again, we will do part 2 at some point.
My brother.
All right, man.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, man.
Amazing.